Alright, hello and welcome. This is CG5 here with Making Better Moves. This one, I'm not sure what to call it. Kind of want to call it like positional advantage stuff. It's like part of that. I think some of the later examples will talk about that. It's more talking about like making moves that sort of force your opponent to think or hesitate or give them pause, force them to consider multiple options. So there's definitely going to be some overlap with like when the like situation analysis video, and sort of and relate to some concepts like making flexible moves or making moves that have multiple meanings at once. And all this stuff is just sort of frameworks and ideas for you to potentially consider as you make some of your moves. Okay, so let's start with the sort of classic example that I've often come back to and that we've talked about before. You're at you have 3 victory points, you're currently on the victory squares, your opponent just moved away, so now you have the choice, right? Do you go after and secure the guaranteed kill, but doing so would then your opponent takes the victory square instead, or do you stay on the victory square and go after the kill next round? So what I mentioned this example because from this perspective I just gave, it's the opponent that gave us the choice. The opponent did a move, even though it was a sort of pretty simple move in this case, but they made a move that forced us to make a sort of bigger picture decision. And so that's kind of the types of moves and situations I'll be talking a little bit more about today. And so let's start with a more sort of common, maybe not necessarily common, but consider the following scenario. So we're going to be Fancy Skin Team. Our opponent moves up, aiming to kill our Elf Wizard. Now we could run away with the Elf Wizard, and that might be sort of be like especially tempting if there's no blocks in hand, right? But what if instead we moved our warrior up to threaten a kill onto their wizard? So now what? Okay, so this is sort of getting a little bit more of what I'm talking about, right? Like the opponent has to sort of think about, what's up, oh, maybe this is a block or whatever else, but also just like, but they also have to think about, okay, is it worth going for the trade? Is it worth trading, killing this enemy elf wizard, but then losing my own? Is that worth it? They have to think about that. Now in some sort of game theory terms, this is sort of weird. It's you don't want to give your opponent the choice, right? Because they're always going to take the one that's better for them. However, okay, so our opponent, basic skin team, they have to, right? It's their turn. They have the opportunity to either kill our elf wizard and then lose their elf wizard in the process, or move their elf wizard away first. Now this probably would be a better example if, say, maybe the human priest. Ooh, I kind of like this, right? So, okay, let's say we have Dancing Cut, not Nimble Strike, for reasons. Let's say that the human priest is also actually pretty low life, such that, with a step attack or whatever, or maybe a step attack into something else, the cat human warrior could actually potentially kill the priest. But the human warrior is threatening this elf wizard now, right? So basic skin team has the choice, and they have to think about this. Okay, one, is it worth killing the enemy elf wizard and letting our elf wizard die? Is it better to run away our elf wizard, but then this one could potentially, Dancing Cut over here? And oh shit, now here's another choice, right? Okay, we have another chance to kill the elf wizard. Should we fight back with the priest? Can we maybe like do something, that kind of thing, right? This example feels a lot better now because it's this notion of noting how the placement of your units is affecting other enemy units' movements, right? So we're factoring in the zone of control as you decide whether or not to move a unit away or not. So let's talk a little bit more about that, how we need to factor in the function that our units have based on the space that they're occupying. So different scenario, same map, because partially because I think maps with multiple victory squares provide more of these types of interesting decision points where, how you move sort of says a lot about what your plan is, and as well it provides more potential opportunities for the opponent to sort of plan an attack around it. So let's say this is the start of the position at start of round 2 or whatever. Okay, we've decided maybe we move our priest up here like this, getting a little fighting going on, and at some point Mr. Dwarf hops in, or maybe it should be like this at the start of. And anyways, let's take the perspective of basic skin team player. What do we want to do? Right, like this is not a fun position for the priest, right? It's super tempting to move the priest away. Waddle waddle. Right here, and okay, here's already another position, right? If we move here, we're sort of trying to protect the priest. If we move the priest up here, we're trying to draw the enemy away and sort of get them further away from other people. So that's something to consider as well. But let's say we want to move here because that's probably the more natural response. Keep people alive, keep them together, you know? You have the support of the dwarf warrior behind them and the elf wizard. Because if these two units start to move into chase, then the elf wizard can see them. But what does this let the fancy skin team do? They could just sort of hop on. And now they're in this sort of fantastic, right? They're the ones who have the victory squares. They're the ones with the victory squares, and they can sort of respond as needed based on what basic skin team does. Basic skin team as wizards, so could be slightly uncomfortable, but priests have heals, human and dwarf HP is cool, stuff like that. So what I wanted to highlight is that you want to move the priest. You don't you really want to move the priest away in this situation. Right? This is not a fun place to be, but doing so gives the opponent the opportunity to put themselves in even more advantageous position, right? Because on the one hand, right, because there is a sort of an argument to stay on. If you can stave off, if you can survive the attacks, right? Maybe you have a sneaky cushioning, armor, defender's lock, whatever else, or like 3 greater heals, because sometimes that happens. Well, shit. Now you have 2 victory squares. You just got, and you're probably getting a victory square, a victory star from the victory squares. We talked about last time how a very common way to win the game is get 2 stars in the victory squares and then kill 2 units. You're fucking halfway there. Maybe you already did it round 1 or something, depending on the situation, right? And here's another thing, right? If you can survive this, let's look at how if we move our dwarf here first, and then we run the priest back, the priest is extra safe now. Because now these two, if they want to chase, they have to go after big person here. That said, wait, oh shit, this person moved, this person committed. Now it's gonna hop here, safe from stabs, for example, and stabs on dwarf pretty good. Check if their range. Now this could be its own set of dicey. Who knows? And shit, imagine if this one sneaks in with defender's block protection. That'd be pretty snazzy. That'd be pretty snazzy. So if you can make these kinds of moves to force your opponent into an uncomfortable position, and sort of force them to retreat, and then that sort of gives you a better positional advantage as well. That's pretty awesome, right? So if we continue working with this example, let's say things were slightly different. Maybe we do have something like this, but maybe it's something like this at the start of the next round, right? Okay, basic skin team is obviously at this sort of positional disadvantage in that they're the ones on the timer since they don't have control of the victory squares. In other words, it's up to this team, it's up to basic skin team to make some sort of move, make some sort of play, make an attack, etc. Right? And so they have a few different options, right? It's possible they wait a few more turns just to get the right hand, but the sort of main options this team has, they can either try and bust through these 2 here, or go after the 1 human warrior down here. But do you see where I'm saying? Let's say, Mr. Dwarf waddles here, right? Because it's, if you can pile 3 people onto 1, That's pretty good. That's a good way to fight. Well, shit, Mr. Priest can hop up here, start poking and poking, and this is actually really efficient because now this one can hop and then step attack in, right? Alternatively, you could have this one go there and then step in like anyways, but like this way you can threaten to stab. Honestly, this might be the better move because then you maintain control of the victory squares while threatening stuff, but it's probably a little bit more committal in that basic skin team doesn't care too much yet, right? Like you don't want to move the priest now because then the dwarf, if they have like dancing cut, right, can just go straight in. The priest there is in a really nice position using their zone of control to limit the enemy movement. So again, like, right, this is part of what I'm talking about. It may be really tempting to move this priest for whatever reason, but you have to realize that you have to be aware that the zone of control, it's actually protecting a very important spot right now. Cool. Now let's go back to the start of things. Now let's say that basic skin team actually decides to go after these two over here. Well, this is its own set of weird, right? Maybe it's a calm vicious thrust or something. Maybe the priest moves in, and now, Elf Wizard sad. Elf Wizard very sad. Where are you gonna go? Like this way? Like, okay, so this actually could work out in that if the human warrior chases, you're sort of pulling them away from your melee units and gives them time, like, to sort of settle this engagement. But like, depending on how things go, maybe this priest does get beat up pretty badly, and then this one goes in, but they have a team walk, so it's like this, and now, now human warrior's sad. Ooh. So probably it makes a bit more sense to don't chase, but just surround and clamp these two. That said, Elf Wizard is free to harass, and it's good sightlines to all of them here, so interesting. But I'm hoping the theme is clear, right? Be mindful of, like in this situation, be mindful of where the attacks could come from, and that you are sort of surrounded. Like, just be careful. Just be careful. That's all. No, actually, there's actually one other situation we can talk about, because what if it was something like this instead, right? So now, again, similar concept, but hey, the priest, this priest could go here for fighty fight, or they could actually just run here, try to take a neutral, try to sort of set things back to a neutral position where both players have 2 units on the victory squares and can sort of slow down, calm things down. You may remember from the taking victory squares video, that's taking victory squares round 1, but that idea of, oh shit, this person moved, this person's vulnerable, could spark things this way, or we could all try, or now the fancy skin team could all just try to pile in on this way. Who knows? No, just try to notice the value that your units have simply where they are, and how that can change when they move. Because oftentimes, like when you're attacking, like especially as warriors, if you can push an enemy unit that's sort of in the way, if you can scare them into running away, that can often be the window you need to let another one of your units move further in than they could before, right? This is very much related to the being efficient video where, and we talked about this earlier, right, in terms of like zone of control, this unit right here is protecting this very valuable choke point. And moving them away lets people run in. Suddenly this is no longer difficult terrain and people can charge right in. And again, note the value where if it was something like this, as long as if the dwarf just stays here and if this priest doesn't move, none of the other units on the enemy team can get in. That's pretty cool. There's one example I want to show from a game I played recently, and unfortunately, I don't mean to be mean, but this is like an example of a kind of move not to do. You'll see. Okay, so here's the situation at the start of the round. I'm in white. My opponent Spring Heel in black. If you're seeing this, Spring Heel, I don't mean to be mean, but I do want to talk about one specific move that you did and how if it was different. Well, the overall context of this game, the situation is not good for Spring Heel based on the kind of deck I'm using and whatnot. Okay, this is the start of the round. I dump a lot of buffs onto people. I eventually move my warrior over here to threaten an attack. Eventually, so moves happen, we get into this position here. I dodge to right here, and the big move right here. Spring Heel uses a leap. Who uses the leap? The priest. The priest uses the leap, and let's watch where they go. Oof. Oof. And I say oof because in this case, they're just like fully retreating. Okay. Spring Heel's turn. We know they have a leap. They can move 2 squares away. Instead of here, which does so little and has like, which does so little. Arguably, it's weird because it's like, okay, maybe they want to stay within line of sight to get like a heal off or something. What I want to mention is that I think a slightly better alternative to leaping back here, which is like a full retreat, which is not helpful given that all the problem and the action's happening over here, right? They need to do something about this, they need to do something about this. This was just going to be a huge problem for them. If he leapt to here instead, right, at the very least, so like, if we assume that I am trying to get the kill on this warrior, which is very likely given that I moved, my human warrior moved off the victory squares onto here, into a sort of weird position. You have to think, since I moved off the victory squares, something's up, right? And so they move their warrior out of the way. Cool, that makes a lot of sense. Leaping here is suddenly a lot cooler because next round, they could at least threaten, they have the potential to do something, to potentially like run in here and do something about this wizard, especially if my warrior chases down his warrior, right? Let's say I had a nimble strike. Even the flank move impaling step, I'm over here, right, if I get the kill on this warrior, I'm in sort of this zone. Whereas if the priest was here and the next round could potentially run in, pin this one down, right? Suddenly I have to be really careful with my wizard, right? Because I can't move this way. If I stay there, I'm going to get pinned. If I move here, I can at least move here, next to like near priest, to like sort of threaten something. But then that then lets this warrior up here close in on me. Again, I recognize he was not in a good position. I just want to say that, right, there's so much more feeling and there's so much you can do by moving forward over here. It's still in a very safe position. This wizard can't see that tile at all. Rather than sort of walking, like moving the warrior back, I agree with, given how low HP he is, but moving the priest back, he's giving away so much ground by doing that, right? And all the actions over here, and he's moving away from where he needs to be. Right? If we think about trying to make moves with multiple meanings, or that allow you to remain flexible and give you the opportunities to do multiple things, moving back here, like 0 opportunities, it only means one thing. Moving here gives 2-3 opportunities, right? This one comes in, right? I could choose to attack. I could most importantly try and go in after the vulnerable people this way. Like I might even have to think like, okay, this one's actually like really low. What if I just try and surround this one, make them all really uncomfortable? Because if he's at really low life, then my wizard can probably slowly pick them off really easily. So like, that's the kind of thing where moving here makes me think a little bit more. I think that's about all I have to say. I will say that I've been saying positional advantage a lot in this video, and is what it sounds like, right? Who has the advantage based on the placement of their units on the map and relative to enemy units and victory squares and whatever else, right? Whoever has the more advantageous on board based on the position, primarily position of their units, but obviously, you know, cards in hand and life will factor into that as well. Whoever has the advantage there has the positional advantage, and you know, it's a sort of soft term that's not really quantifiable. Maybe it is in terms of like, you know, how many like move cards it would need for someone to get past you versus not or whatever, but that's what I mean. And if you do that situation analysis stuff, then it'll give you a better sense of who has the advantage at different times, and that will help you make better moves. Haha. Okay, that's all I got. Thank you for listening as always and watching, and I will see y'all next time.